Is the moon made out of cheese? Is the moon flat? Is the sun really the sun? Or is it just one big LED? Is the sky really blue? Or maybe it's just people being colorblind from seeing the true color of the sky. This and many other things is what we're going to be talking about, because we're going to be talking about conspiracy theories today. Now, what do I mean? What led us down this path? Well, let's take a look at what we get from Alexa.
Alexa, who made you?
I was invented by Amazon.
Alexa,
Okay, makes sense.
are you spying on me?
I only send audio back to Amazon when I hear you say the wake word. For more information, and to view Amazon's privacy notice, visit the help section of your Alexa app.
Alexa,
Now, that's a bit of spying from the company, but what about for the government?
Alexa, do you work for the NSA? Alexa, do you work for the NSA?
You notice how it turns off? That just shows there's something up. Now, bear with me. I had this kind of planned out from the beginning, as you can see with the tabs, and I've kind of already lost on my train of thought of where I'm going with this. Either way, there's spying going on using not just Alexa, but other things too. Now, this kind of starts for people down some pathways for conspiracies. So it's obvious that people just can't always trust, or like they always have to have like some sort of explanations just to kind of make them understand or feel comfortable about certain situations. Now, while I try to figure out some of the stuff, like this particular tab, one of the reasons why I bring in the government, because a lot of people have a lot of stuff against the government, or believe that the government has a lot of ploys for stuff. In particular, some of us believe that the government has made us fat.
Here's a riddle. How is it that ever since the government began telling us what to eat, we've gotten fatter and sicker? In 1977, when the government first set dietary guidelines, the average American male weighed 170 pounds. He now weighs 197. It's not any better for women, 145 to 170.
Of course, it's right after they made the dietary recommendations that people started to get fatter.
And you don't need an academic study to know the same thing is happening to kids. Just look around. The weight gain has real-life consequences.
Oh, yeah. Not to say that I broken a swing with my weight, but I have done a similar situation where I have broke a chair or two just by sitting down. And I'm not that heavy. Currently right now I'm around 200 pounds, not kilos. That'd be a lot. Although I believe in kilos, that'd be like around 100 kilo. Maybe a little bit more. That's just a rough estimation. I'm not doing a calculation in my head. I'm too lazy.
And has real-life consequences. The percentage of Americans diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, a condition that can lead to severe medical issues, has risen from 2% in 1977 to over 9% in 2015. In hard numbers, that's 5 million people to over 30 million people. How did this happen?
Hold on, what were those numbers again? 77, 2%. Type 2 diabetes, 9% of population. Okay.
2015. In hard numbers, that's 5 million people to over 30 million people. How did this happen? It all started innocently enough in the 1950s when
They say around the 1950s. When was this data taken? So 77 is when they took the initial count. That said, what does this data mean? 5 million just Americans? People in the world?
30 million people. How did this happen? It all started innocently enough in the 1950s when President Dwight Eisenhower had a heart attack while in office. Suddenly, the issue of heart health became a national obsession. Keep in mind, this was an era when scientists had harnessed the power of the atom, unlocked the secrets of DNA, and cured once incurable diseases like polio. Surely there had to be a scientific solution to heart disease. There was, and a charismatic medical researcher from the University of Minnesota named Ansel Keys had it. Cholesterol, Keys claimed, was the villain of the heart disease story. His now famous 7-country study determined conclusively, in his mind at least, that people who consumed high amounts of fat, specifically saturated fat, had higher cholesterol levels and thus higher rates of heart attacks.
7 countries study. I wonder what those 7 countries are. Probably first worlds. Specifically saturated fats too.
Lower your fat intake, and you would lower your heart disease risk. The ever-confident Keys spread the gospel. As an influential member of the American Heart Association, he was in a very strong position to do so. There was only one problem. Keys' study was bad science. The sample size was so small, the data collection integrity so shoddy, and the lifestyle variables between the countries he studied so great that his research had no scientific validity.
That makes sense. Although just turn into a science to do this. Make me cough.
In other words, he asserted a conclusion he couldn't prove. When other scientists questioned Keys' conclusions, they were invariably met with stern responses like, people are dying while you're quibbling over data points.
But I mean, it's the devil in the details. You need those small details so you can understand the bigger picture. The picture better. If you don't, then you're just... It's kind of similar of just like having faith in what somebody believes. Or what somebody tells you.
And there are great benefits and no risks to adopting this new way of eating. In 1973, the American Heart Association set the dietary limit on saturated fat at 10%. And in 1977, the US government followed suit. Where did the 10% value come from? It didn't come from any scientific data. It was merely a government committee's best guess.
I think that's the same reason why the driving limit in a lot of the states is only about 55. I know there are some limits that go up to like 75-ish, 65, 75, 55. And I think the main reason for that was just to kind of help preserve gas. More in actuality, I think it's like the faster you go, the more fuel you'll save.
This was despite contrary evidence like the 1957 Western Electric Company employee study, showing no difference in heart attacks in those who ate more or less saturated fat. A longer-term study of the same Western Electric subjects in 1981 reached the same conclusion. But again, no one wanted to hear it. To make this all easier to understand and to spread the message...
Let's go back. Go back a little bit.
It didn't come from any scientific data. It was merely a government committee's best guess. This was despite contrary evidence like the 1957 Western Electric Company employee study, showing no difference in heart attacks in those who ate more or less saturated fat. A longer-term study of the same Western Electric subjects in 1981 reached the same conclusion. But again, no one wanted to hear it. To make this all easier to understand and to spread the message to schools, the food pyramid was created. That's the chart you first saw in 3rd or 4th grade, with all the supposedly good foods at the bottom, meaning eat a lot of those, and the bad foods at the top. Eat those ones sparingly.
I don't think I've seen a food pyramid like that.
What our kids are fed in school, what our military troops are fed on bases, what sick people are fed in hospitals, what crops we plant, and how we raise our cattle are all predicated on this deceptive nutritional concept. As Americans ate less saturated fat, margarine instead of butter, processed oils like corn oil instead of olive oil, low-fat milk, low-fat yogurt, and so on, they also started to eat more heart-healthy grains, exactly what the food pyramid and the updated version called My Plate advise you to do. As the consumption of saturated fat decreased by almost 40%, the consumption of refined grains, carbohydrates that convert to sugar in the body, increased substantially. Total intake of calories also began to increase. This happened in no small part because food companies took advantage of the low-fat craze. They lowered fat and increased sugar. Suddenly, supermarkets were full of supposedly healthy, low-fat, high-sugar foods. It remains that way today. Foods that are high in sugar stimulate reward centers in the brain and leave us wanting more. Thus, the famous line about potato chips, bet you can't eat just one. The end result is a fatter population with greater and greater health issues, like type 2 diabetes, a problem that's getting worse, not better. How do we get ourselves out of this spiral? There are many answers. For some, it's a low-carb, high-fat diet.
It's interesting that when it comes to dieting like this, people still have arguments on which is the best diet, because I still hear like a lot of people saying that, oh, this diet prefers better, like the all meat, the I think the Neanderthals diet is the one where you have like high meat, high seeds, like stuff you can gather with like barely any vegetables. I think no bread, and they say like, oh, they're getting so much healthier. And mainly, they're just like introducing new foods that they haven't had before. So like they're at least I believe like one thought is like they're introducing new nutritions they haven't had before, or their body desperately needed, and they just weren't aware that they needed it. And that's the interesting thing when it comes to dieting, because depending on where your like genetics come from, at least this is my thought. I don't know if there's like any proof out there or like any studies that have been done, but like genetically, like your body has been like used. Your body grew up in like in an environment where, at least prehistorically, well, I guess not prehistorically, but like even before like the whole world was like crossing around and doing all this globalization stuff, you had the localization of the food where you would get. And even then, like some of the stuff that you would eat in that area wasn't introduced until like a few hundred years ago too, or even like 100, or like some fairly recent, to where your body hasn't like adjusted to those kind of food intakes, or those like unique food nutritions. Because like some of the food that you can be eating currently, like chocolates or like something else, could be causing your skin or like some sort of like irritation or some sort of a reaction for your body, or just does nothing. We don't know. And I don't know if those studies have been there or not. Not to say like, it's like it's more of just like a regional thing, or like you're more of a genetic thing from your body, right? And so like your body might not even react to something that you never had before. So that's good. But it might also react to it and we just don't know. one of the interesting things when it comes to like dieting.
Diet. For others, it's a Mediterranean diet. For some, it's vegetarianism. For others, it might be something else. You need to find the best solution for you. And that's really the point. We need to take responsibility for our own health. If the food pyramid has taught us one thing, it's this. Don't rely on the government.
I just come to realize that he's talking.
I'm Dr. Brett Scher, cardiologist for Prager University.
That voice does not match this body. Granted, it did sound like a no offense to Dr. I already forgot how he said the last name, so Brett. Sounds a bit younger than how he looks. Although I don't know how old he is. He could be 22. Anyways, so this is one of the theories of how, I guess it's not really a theory, right? It's one of the conspiracy theories that actually seems to be true, right? It has like a logical step back into how it actually occurred. What about like turning you into a nerd? So in order to do this, we need to kind of distinguish, kind of going back to what we've done before. I figured this time we could do a little bit of a video watch to get an understanding the difference between at least
cultish type things like.
Heads up, we detected copyrighted audio, videos are streamed, we temporarily blocked. Oh, okay. Well, that's a brief introduction for nerdy. Let's wait for this to pop away first. I don't know why I'm getting this pop up now when I was doing fine with the other stuff. Let's play music while we wait. Okay, you're still detecting stuff. Let's ignore the top 10 signs for if you're a nerd or not. Let's just go straight into the flat planet stuff. Flat planet. Yeah, there we go. Excellent. Oh, I guess I could have played it. Whatever. Flat planet, flat Earth. So this was going from like, seeing if the government was turning into a nerd or not. We're going to take a look at other conspiracy theories, one of which is the flat Earth conspiracy theory. Flat Earth model is an archaic and scientific disproven concept of Earth shaped as a plane or disk. Many ancient cultures subscribe to a flat Earth cosmography, including Greece until the classical period, 5th century BC, the Bronze Age and Iron Age civilization of the Near East until the Hellenistic period, and China until the 17th century. Oh, really? Although, let's take a look at this. Okay, well, whatever. I want to see their reasoning as to why you say China wasn't a believer of the round Earth until the 17th century. First doubted, blah blah blah. Progress, especially among those biblical. Perhaps the most famous was the British, blah blah blah. Okay, hold on. We're gonna China. No. Okay, that's not helping. Let's. I don't think this reference is accurate to. I mean, maybe it said it and I just didn't. Let's do another quick look. Oh. Cough. Wikipedia, you can't not be lying to me, right? I know I'm just kind of doing like a very bad skim of it. Calculate blah 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 blah. It's not further advanced measurements blah blah blah. European navigation circle blah blah blah. In the 16th century, imagine a space proof highly needed. backlash active project, especially those about alliteration. Yep. People with the Bible love flat Earth, apparently. It doesn't say specifically. Yeah, no, it just starts to go into more details. Either way, wrong thing. Either way, this is a huge Wikipedia beliefs on why people, well, not beliefs, but like at least what it is. What is flat Earth? And I was hoping we might go into more details in the video if we don't get yelled at. But it's crazy how dedicated some people can be into a lot of stuff. I know one thing is for religious people to be, you know, very into the religion that they're in, to the point where they would do crazy stuff. But it's like another when you see people doing it outside of religious stuff, like, you know, in this case. Come on. There we go. Like in this case, this man launching himself into a self-made rocket. Man name. Well, actually, let me. You know what? I'm just gonna add my own music. Well, no, hold on. Let's see how far away I can get away with. Oh, not the ads. There's a rocket to help prove his belief that the Earth is flat. Let's take a look at that rocket real quick. So I'm assuming that's him inside of it. Man, good on him for trying it out. I like it. I like the American flag right there too. Oh, never mind. There's a guy right there, so maybe it's not him. Mad Mike. Mad Mike Hughes. Hughes? I always forgot how to pronounce this. Higgs? Hugs. Hughes. Launches off in a man-made rocket, blah blah blah. Soar off of the ground and ended up. Ooh, a hard landing. Oh no. Is he okay? Did he make it out okay? Was rocking near Amboy, California, pulled 2 parachutes while falling back to Earth. He called the rest a hard landing and told the AP, "I'll feel it in the morning." Oh, that's... Wait, he didn't even get that high. Maybe it's high, I don't know, but it doesn't look that high to me. Although that still is impressive for making your own rocket. Mad Mike acknowledged his rocket launch was as dangerous, telling the AP, "This thing wants to kill you 10 different ways." Of course. Oh, we get a close-up of it. It was not his first attempt at launching himself into space to prove his theory that Earth is flat. Paramedics made Hughes after he plunged back to Earth. He was injured, but the type and severity of the injuries are unclear. Ooh, I mean, if they got him on a stretcher, that seems pretty bad already. Do I believe the Earth is shaped like a frisbee? I believe it is. Do I know for sure? No, that's why I want to go up in space. He hopes one day to build a balloon that can take 68 miles up into space. Up to space. I mean, you're better off just making a balloon. Why a rocket? I mean, it's cool that you made a rocket. Not a lot of people could say that. maybe a lot more than I'm thinking, but still, that's impressive. So, flat earthers, why do they believe what they believe and why? Let's see if we can get away with the video again. This is just a Scientific American video, or video, blah, 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 blah. Podcast episode? I don't know. Either way, I'm not going to play it because since it's Scientific America, it's definitely going to get me some sort of copyright strike. So we're going to do something equally as give me a good chance of getting a copyright strike.
As many
I wish I can I? Context. I would like to minimize you while I do this on screen. Why is this here? Oh, great. Thank you for that. I don't want to know anymore. Either way, flat earth science. Wrong, but not stupid. So we're going to see why it's not stupid.
people in science communication am fascinated with flat earthers. Here you have a group of people steadfastly rejecting evidence that's right in their face. Today I want to tell you why I nevertheless think flat earthers are neither stupid nor anti-scientific, most of them anyway. More importantly, I also want to explain why you should not be embarrassed if you can't remember how we know that the Earth is round. But first I have to tell you what flat earthers actually believe and how they got there.
I like her.
The most popular
Him?
flat
I
Earth
don't know.
model is that of a disk where the North Pole is in the middle and the South Pole is an ice wall on the edge of the disk. But not all flat earthers sign up to this. An alternative is the so-called bipolar model, where both poles are on the disk, surrounded by water that's held by a rim of something.
A rim of some sort. So North Pole. I'm guessing. Oh, there is no South Pole here.
And the South Pole is an ice
Never
wall
mind.
on the edge
It's the ice wall.
of the disk. But not all flat earthers sign up to this. An alternative is the so-called bipolar model, where both poles are on the disk, surrounded by water that's held by a rim of something, maybe ice or rocks. And a minority of flat earthers believe that Earth is really an infinite plane. They mostly agree, though, that gravity does not exist, and that the observations we normally attribute to gravity come instead from the upward acceleration of the flat Earth.
You know, that's very interesting. Upward mobility of the flat Earth.
As a consequence, the apparent gravitational acceleration is the same everywhere on Earth. I explained some weeks ago that this is in conflict with evidence. We know that the gravitational acceleration is most definitely not the same everywhere on Earth. The idea that gravity is due to upward acceleration also causes other problems. For example, you have to assume that the Moon and the Sun accelerate along with the flat Earth, so we don't just run into them. That's an ad hoc assumption, which disfavors the flat Earth hypothesis against models where the orbits of the Moon and the Sun can be calculated from the gravitational law. But that's not the only problem. You also have to get the Moon and the Sun to somehow circle around over the disk to explain day and night and the phases of the Moon.
I mean, wouldn't it just go like underneath the disk then? If it's like accelerating up. Let's say like the flat disk is accelerating up. Wouldn't the moon and sun just like be orbiting around? Although, if there's no gravity and they're just doing a movement going upwards, I mean, it'd have to be spinning then. Either the disk is spinning, or there's like some weird rotation going on the disk to where the sun and the moon cancel each other out, making it day and night. If that makes sense to you. Well, if it makes sense to me, I don't think it makes sense. I don't even know what I just said. I guess the way I was thinking of it is kind of like constructive and destructive waves, but that doesn't, I don't know how that plays into this.
To get the day-night cycle to be noticeable, you have to shrink the Sun and move it closer to the Earth. You also have to somehow get the radiation of the sun to be directional. That's many more ad hoc assumptions.
I mean, I like that one.
But even with those assumptions, the size of the sun will change during the day more than we observe. And no one has ever successfully predicted solar eclipses on a flat Earth or calculated the observed motions of the planets.
I would hope not.
The bottom line is, it's not easy to improve on today's scientific standard. It was for good reasons that the hypothesis of a flat Earth was abandoned more than 2000 years ago. Some people suggested to me that flat earthers do not actually believe the Earth is flat. They are just mocking people who take scientific evidence on trust. And that, let us be honest, is something we all do to some extent.
I'm sure you're right. We do, to some extent. It's kind of like how, if you to think of like specific atoms, or not specific atoms, but just like atoms, and how we trust the scientists and their data that's what we have at that really small molecular level, right? But then like you've come across data later on where they discovered, okay, these atoms are not the only smallest things that atoms are not the smallest things that we can get, but we can have these small things, these small particle known as quarks that make up these particular components of an atom. Or like even the atoms are like made of particular components like electron, neutrons, and even those are made of those, quarks of like different combinations, which are like, I think they're still, I'm trying to remember the quark chart. I don't exactly remember it off my head, but it's like more than definitely more than three, but like three interesting groups of them. Either way, it's like a lot of people don't really understand like how that's the case, but they trust the idea that the people doing the scientific work are, I mean, legit. Granted, there are people also like, double checking that their data is actually what it means, right? They have those peers looking over that data. So it's like we're trusting the people who are double checking. Sometimes they don't get it right too. There's always like recalls on articles that you see published like usually like a day or two, but that's common because they're making corrections. But like even like some publications, I think they recall are just like debunk like years later.
Every now and then. And it is probably the case that some flat earthers are indeed just pretending. But I find it exceedingly implausible they are all just faking it. To begin with, they would all have to be excellent actors. Just look at some of the videos on YouTube.
Shakespeare says that we're all acting on a stage, our own personal stage. So in a way, we're all the main characters of our own story. Shakespeare said it, right?
Also, they are putting quite some time and in some cases money behind their conviction. And that's why most of them full well know coming out as flat earther will make others doubt their sanity. All that makes it unlikely they are just in for the fun. Now, you may want to discard flat earthers as conspiracy theorists, which some fraction of them arguably are.
Wait, they're not all conspiracy theorists? I thought they would be.
But I think that would be somewhat unfair to most of them. To understand why, it helps to have a look at the history of the Flat Earth Society.
Oh.
The Flat Earth Society goes back to an Englishman by name Samuel Rowbotham, who lived in the 19th century. He was a medical doctor who believed he had proved that the Earth is flat and then complained for the rest of his life that the supposed scientific authorities...
Is this a real book? I just need to look it up. I had to pause it because I'm astronomy. Oh, it is. It has like an updated maybe not. Hold on. I'm trying to see if it has an updated cover. Yep. Huh. Oh, never mind. I thought it was like 75 pages long. Let's say that's the length of a child's book, no? Like a high school book? Oh, I guess they still make the old cover. I guess it depends on the publication. There we go. 222, 132. Yeah, either way.
Ignored him. He referred to his method as ceteticism, after the Greek word ceteo, to seek. By ceteticism, he meant an extreme version of the philosophy of empiricism. Rowbotham's philosophy, which is still the philosophy of flat earthers today, is that if you want to understand nature, you should only rely on information from your own senses. You can, for example, read on the website of the Flat Earth Society. The world looks flat, the bottoms of clouds are flat, the movement of the sun. These are all examples of your senses telling you that we do not live on a spherical heliocentric world. This is using what's called an empirical approach, or an approach that relies on information from your senses. That flat earthers insist on evidence from your own senses only really is key to understanding their problem. I will come back to this.
I mean, that's the same thing you can apply to people who are not religious. Atheist. There you go. That's the word I was looking for. Right? They can't observe God or the faith or like any of that religious stuff, so they, they deem it not to exist.
But first, let me tell you the rest of their history. After Rowbotham's death in 1884, the flat earth idea was carried forward by another British guy, Samuel Shenton, who once explained to a journalist, "No man knows the ultimate shape of the earth, but that portion we live on is definitely flat. No one will ever know what the whole complexity is like, I suppose, because it goes beyond his sphere of observation, investigation, and comprehension." Again, note the emphasis on personally collected evidence. In 1954, Shenton created the International Flat Earth Society.
Real quick, this image. I like the fact that he's pointing at the Earth, or like the globe. This round. This wrong. This round.
Daniel Shenton, who is not really internet, flat earthers did not attract much attention. Johnson Dye was taken over by the US-American Charles
There we
Johnson.
go.
But even after the advent of the internet, flat earthers did not attract much attention. Johnson died in 2001, at which point the Flat Earth Society had 3,500 or so members. The job then fell to another American, Daniel Shenton, who is not
That's
related
old.
to the earlier Shenton, but whose logic falls right in line. He said in an interview with The Guardian in 2010, "I don't think there is solid proof. I'm not intentionally being stubborn about it, but I feel our senses tell us these things, and it would take an extraordinary level of evidence to counteract those. How many people have actually investigated it? Have you?" Shenton had the idea to set up a wiki page for the Flat Earth community. Still, no one
Oh,
cared.
I didn't see
But in
that.
2016, everything changed. What happened?
Hold on. I gotta hear her say that again.
Shenton had the idea to set up a wiki page for the Flat Earth community. Still, no one cared. But in 2016, everything changed.
Must have been checked by the
What
Fire
happened
Nation.
in 2016 is that a few devout flat earthers put up videos here on YouTube. And that really got things going by way of recruiting new believers. These videos have meanwhile been watched by millions of...
Hold on. Let's see if these videos are still up. Flat Earth science proof. Real. 2016. we go. It's still up. I'm getting hit by an ad. Let's get through the ad. Bam. Already speaks legitimacy.
Baby bear to Papa Bear, do you read over?
Papa Bear to Baby Bear, go ahead, over.
Papa Bear, I'm getting pretty close to the end. Do you still see me? Over.
Baby Bear, I can see you just fine. Continue to your objective, over.
What are you guys doing?
Mini Believer bet me $20 that he could prove that the Earth is flat.
By rowing a boat?
Yeah, we're recreating this famous experiment where this dude had his buddy row a boat 6 miles down the river to see if his boat disappeared over the horizon. You see, if Mini Believer rows 6 miles away, then I should lose sight of him and his boat because they'll be 16 feet below the horizon.
Papa Bear, my arms are getting tired. Over.
Keep rowing, Baby Bear! This bet was your idea. Over.
This sounds like a good experiment, but it feels like you're missing some variables here.
No way. This is observation. How much more scientific can you get than observation?
I mean, it makes sense when you think that their logic is that the water doesn't curve down, but since they're on the river, right? They're assuming that the river all around, or like the water all around the world, like sea level is actually sea level. Like there's no like below sea level or above sea level when you're just looking at the sea. Where in actuality, there's actually a difference in like the height of the sea in different areas of the world. So I don't know how well that applies to rivers though. I imagine you'll still, play some. A large portion probably plays on the land that it's on, but we'll see.
I don't know, boss. I'm skeptical.
Yeah, well, Mini Believer is pretty sure. Mini Believer told me that the Earth is flat, and that made me very skeptical.
You tried.
How far away is he now?
Fucking ask him yourself.
Hey, Mini Believer, where are you? 10-9, say again, over. Believer, it's me. Where are you? Say again, I'm having trouble reading you, over.
Dude, this is a really formal experiment. You have to use radio jargon. Start each conversation with your call sign and end it by saying over.
Okay, what's my call sign?
Mama Bear.
Mama Bear, why?
Sorry, man, you weren't here when we chose the call signs.
Jesus, fine. Mama Bear here. Mini Believer, where are you? Say again, who are you calling Mama Bear? Over. Mama Bear to Baby Bear. Where are you? Say again, you broke off. Over. Fucking Baby Bear. I'm fucking Mama Bear. Where are you? Over. Baby Bear to Mama Bear. Are you asking my 20? Over. Baby Bear, for fuck's sake. Yes. What's your fucking 20? Baby Bear to Mama Bear. What's my 20 what? Over. What's your 20? Over. Baby Bear to Papa Bear, come in, over.
This is Papa Bear, go ahead, over.
I've reached my destination. Do you see me? Over.
What the fuck? Baby Bear, I see you. What? I see you. I don't believe it. Over.
And that is why you fail. Over.
Conspiracy theory. All of the best Puffski. Conspiracy.
Over. You two are fucking retarded.
Alright, well, let's kind of continue on this.
And that had consequences. In a 2018 poll in the United States, 2% of the respondents said they believe the Earth is flat, while another 7% are not quite sure. Reliable numbers are hard to come by, but we are meanwhile probably talking about more than 10,000 people in the developed world who reject science that was settled by the Middle Ages. Let that sink in for a moment. How does someone end up rejecting something as scientifically well established as the fact that the Earth is round? There is not only one reason, of course. Some flat earthers find the idea is appealing for religious reasons. Others are of the crowd who think NASA is evil, space is a fake, and the moon landing didn't happen. But mostly it's because they think they are merely being rational skeptics. They have not themselves been able to prove the Earth is round, so they believe they are only reasonable when they request evidence. CNN, for example, reports from a Flat Earth conference. Like most of the speakers at the event CNN spoke to, he was convinced after he decided he couldn't prove the Earth's roundness. I want to leave aside here that, of course, you cannot strictly speaking prove any empirical fact. You can only prove mathematical identities. So more precisely, we should speak of seeking evidence that disfavors the hypothesis that the Earth is flat, of which there is plenty, starting with the historical evidence about how stellar constellations shift if you travel, how the length of shadows changes, to Newton's 1/r² force law, that is the law for a sphere, not a disk, not to mention Einstein and gravitational redshift and the perihelion precession of Mercury, and so on and so forth. The problem that flat earthers have is that they cannot do most of these observations themselves. So if you buy the idea that it's only...
Oh, I want to try to see if I can find the convention for the International Flat Earther Convention. But it seems like they haven't done one since 2019. A little disappointed. Take a look here. What do they have for speakers? Testing the globe. Anybody I recognize? Paul on the plane. I don't recognize any of these people. Who's sponsored? Celebrate Truth. Paul on the plane. Flat Earth Podcast. Huh. A little disappointed that there's not a convention for 2023. Wait. This September. Oh, they held one in Menorca. Where's that? Menorca. Mediterranean island, right? Okay, but where specifically? Oh, it's one of the islands in it's one of the islands in one of the Spanish islands. Baleares. Baleares. Balearic Seas. Huh. So they had it there. Where's the 2023 one? Play some music. Get this pumping for the flat earth stuff. '22 conference. Conference problem, flat earth. Never mind. International physics. No. Physicist tournament. What? International physicist tournament. What is this? '11th International Physicist Tournament. Hold on, is there like a website? What is this? Bachelor or master's physics student? Engage in IPT with your university or school. At onset, a release to work at 17 physics problems and prepared to compete. Held at one of the world's premier academic institutions. Rules are simple. Challenge a team on a specific physics problem. They present their results. You oppose them, and the third team review the battle. This is simply scientific research at undergrad level. Okay. Let's take a look at the list of problems. I'm no physicist, but it doesn't hurt to take a look. Please find new list on the dedicated page. PDF form. Let's see. How accurately can you determine the number of matches in the matchbox from the sound it makes when you shake it? Can the same method be applied to a box containing chewing gum? That's actually a pretty good question. Here we got a Twitter page. We'll save the date. 23rd to 29th April. Oh, I want to see if I can go to this. Where is this? City of Paris. Hope to see many of you possible. So register the team now for the unforgettable. Oh, it's in Paris though. I'm in America. That's like across the pond. This is pretty cool though. Kinda wanna see what this one is. Wait. What's this Why is it making that sound? I feel like that's the problem. Let's take a look. Singing ice. Most of us have tried to make pebbles bounce on the surface of a lake or river, but if the surface is frozen, the pebble produces a peculiar sound when bouncing, similar to the sound produced when skating on thin, clear ice. Really? Study this phenomenon. Describe quantitative characteristics of the sound and how they depend on the pebble, environmental and launch patterns. I feel like this one's a bit difficult if you're only going to use the video audio, because you can only you're only provided audio from, you're limited by the video. I guess you have to go out and try to produce the sound themselves and isolate that. This is pretty cool. Oh wait, here we go. Sounds you hear while skating. Oh my goodness, it's cracking too while he's doing this. Where's she? I don't know. They're cracking up. Whoa. Wonder what's with the stick. Imagine just to help them in case they fall in. Oh, well, that answered the question. It's not that deep either. Okay, I mean, that still is pretty thick, but...
Vad har du? 45 millimeter.
Still is pretty
Det är
thick.
tjockt ju.
Ja, det är tjockt. Här räcker vad det räcker. Det var ju samma. Ja.
You can see it. Wow, you can even see it like waving around too.
Ja.
Like, hold on. Like it looks still right now. And as he gets closer, you can see the waves. There we go. Waves from him skating. Oh, that's so unsettling. Even when it's like, how many, it was like 45 millimeters thick. I think it was like 2 inches. That's 2 inches. Oh my gosh, look at the cracks. I'm not even reading this. I'm just watching this guy skate around and just looking at the cracks form. Something about it is just quite pleasant. And really spooky. So that's a lot of camera angles that he has. Ooh, that's so spooky. Pretty cool. Anyways.
Only your personally collected evidence that you should accept, then it seems you cannot refute the idea that the Earth is flat, and so Flat Earthers' philosophy forbids them to accept scientific fact. Needless to say, if you want to hold on to your convictions, it helps if you refuse to do observations that could speak against them. There are actually many ways to convince yourself that the Earth is round, which are not that technically difficult. Buy a telescope and try to explain the motions of the moons of Jupiter, for example. So, what's wrong with Flat Earthers' attitude? Isn't asking for evidence exactly what rational thinkers should do? Sure, evidence is key to scientific progress, but Flat Earthers' philosophical approach, by which they reject certain types of evidence, is inconsistent and ultimately logically wrong. See, the only evidence anyone ever has of anything is evidence you collect with your own senses, except as Descartes pointed out, evidence of your own ability to think. But this is not relevant here. Relevant is that the distinction which Flat Earthers are trying to draw between different types of evidence does not exist. All evidence you have is sensory input. If you hear an explanation of someone else's experiment, if you read a paper laying out someone else's argument, that's your own sensory input. A distinction which does exist, however, is that some of our sensory input requires very little decoding, while some requires a lot. Flat Earthers' problem is that they refuse to decode difficult sensory input. A good example for the need to decode sensory input by conscious thought are optical illusions. Your brain tries to interpret visual input in ways that sometimes gives a misleading result, as in this example. You almost certainly think square A is darker than square B. It is not. To understand your sensory input correctly, you need to draw on other
I would assume they were.
in this case, your knowledge about optical illusions. Your brain interprets this image as if it was a natural three-dimensional scene, and therefore calculates back to the original color of the squares.
I just realized this is the dark square and this is the light square, but I would assume that they were different.
Taking
They
into
go optical
account
illusions.
what appears to be a shadow. This is the wrong interpretation if you want to know the actual color of pixels on the screen. The lesson is, if you do not think about your sensory input, if you do not properly decode it, you arrive at the wrong conclusion. Flat Earthers similarly arrive at the wrong conclusion by failing to decode evidence, indeed by simply ignoring a lot of evidence that their own senses deliver.
I mean, it makes
This is
sense.
evidence about how society and how science works. Whether we are scientists or not, we all constantly use this evidence to navigate life, and I'm sure flat earthers are no exception. Just consider going to the supermarket and buying canned soup. Do you have evidence that what's in the can is edible? Probably not. For one, the can's closed. And if you're anything like me, you probably have no idea how or where or by whom it was produced. Why then are you not afraid of eating canned soup?
I mean, the same could be said for a bottle of water. You don't know if that's actually water inside, right? You can see it's clear. You can see that it's like wet, but you don't know if it's actually water or something else.
Isn't this entirely irrational? No, because you do have evidence that canned soup is edible. You know how the legal system in your country works. You know that there are regulations on
Legal system of the country. I wouldn't kind of use that.
what can be sold as food in a supermarket. You know that if what's in that can was harmful to you, then a lot of people along the food chain would be punished for their mistake.
I don't think more of people actually eating it and haven't died immediately from it. I trust that over than the law system.
And they don't want that. Your trust in canned food is an entirely reasonable inference from evidence, evidence that you collected with your own senses, because what else could you possibly have collected it with? Now let's come back to flat earthers. Most of you don't have a physics degree, and chances are that after learning in school how we know the Earth is round, you won't think much about it ever again. By and large, you're probably confident it's correct because what you learned in school was plausible, and you know it is widely taught to children, and you know that your government strives to give children in your country a scientifically accurate education. So you have good reason to think the knowledge you were taught is backed by solid scientific evidence. There is no appealing to authority here. You have totally yourself collected all this evidence about how society works. You have also yourself collected lots of evidence that science works. Any airplane, any laptop, any pair of glasses is evidence that science works. It's evidence that the system works. It's evidence for how the whole world works. So if you cannot recall just what experiments demonstrate that the Earth is not flat, or if you cannot immediately figure out what's wrong with flat earthers' arguments, there's no shame in rejecting their claims, because your rejection is based on evidence, evidence that science works. What's wrong is that flat earthers claim they are leading a scientific argument, but there is no scientific argument about whether the Earth is flat. This argument was settled long ago. Instead, flat earthers' argument is about whether you should trust evidence that other people have collected before you. And it's an important argument because this trust is essential for society and science to
She looks like as if
the only
science
we have is that each and every one of us
looks like the sciences of the flat earther are getting to her.
You see, flat earthers would eventually figure out the Earth is round, but it might take them 1,000 years until they've reinvented more.
They must have gotten to her to the point where she felt compelled to actually make this video. I wonder how many times people gone up to her and asked her to prove that the flat Earth is round, or to ask the Earth is flat, or you know, and she just probably had it. This is probably just her, just at the end of the day, just, you know what, I'm just gonna do this just to kind of get people to stop asking.
This is why I think
people are still gonna ask her.
Should take flat earthers' philosophical problem seriously. It's a problem that any scientifically advanced society must address. It is not possible for each and every one of us to redo all experiments in the history of science. It therefore becomes increasingly important that scientists provide evidence for how science works, so that people who cannot follow the research itself can instead rely on evidence that the system produces correct and useful descriptions of nature. To me, therefore, flat earthers are a warning sign that scientists should take seriously. The more difficult scientific experiments and arguments are to follow for non-experts, the more care we must take to explain how we lead those arguments. Thanks for hearing me out. See you next week.
Is nuclear power green? I mean, surprisingly, it's not, unless like they have like the proper radioactive material, which I think is, I cannot remember the top of my head. I think it's like cesium or something. Cesium, an isotope of cesium. Yeah, we'll subscribe to her, but I like her, Sabine? Definitely German, or like Central European. Either way, she goes into the details of like how to like analyze the information that you're given and what to use for. Where's my music? There we go. Gives you an idea of like how to process information, not just pick and choose, but to take it all in. Real quick though, I want to finish up this proof.
So in my search for some conspiracy level things to debunk, I found this hilarious show. It's called The Late Night Show, hosted by Milenko Nedelkovsky. As far as I can tell, it's Russian. I know some of you are going to tell me it's like Ukrainian or some shit. Anyways, point is, Eastern Europeans love this conspiracy theory stuff. All of the best UFO, flat earth, alternate dimension, government conspiracy theory stuff comes from Eastern Europe. And it seems that this show considers itself an alternate media outlet. And the first guest that I found on the show is a flat earther who goes by the name D Murphy 25.
I like that he's covered.
YouTube channel and says hilarious.
Hold on. D Murphy. D Murphy 23, I think he said, right? Well, D Murphy 25 now. I don't think this is him. Either way, probably not him.
Various things like,
what about the people in Australia? They're standing on the bottom of the globe, won't they fall off?
so we're in for quite the ride.
Maybe that is him.
Flying around the curve of the Earth, then he should be dipping the nose down. Every 5 minutes he should be dipping the nose down to stay around the curve.
This is actually his popular video.
Not planes have to make constant adjustments to stay level between wind, turbulence, and topographical changes.
Okay. Let's get to the point. Oh no, not the ad. No, 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 no. La 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 la.
The boat should have been 16 feet below the horizon. He's 16 feet per mile, and he was able to see.
Observation.
There was a famous experiment back in the 1800s in England called the Bedford Levels experiment. The Bedford Levels is a canal that is perfectly straight for 6 miles. What a chap called Samuel Rowbotham did was he took a telescope, put it in the water about 8 inches above the water, and he had a friend in a rowboat with a flag on the back row all the way to the other end, and he was able to see the flag on the back of the rowboat the whole distance. According to spherical trigonometry, the curve of the Earth is 8 inches per mile squared. So over 5 miles, that's 5 times 525 times 8, which is 200 inches, which works out at 16 feet. That means the boat should have been 16 feet below the horizon. He shouldn't have been able to see the boat.
The problem is that Samuel Rowbotham...
Oh, you're kidding me.
His experiment was hardly scientific. He didn't factor in any kind of variables. He didn't set up any kind of measurement tool to prove that the boat was still on the same plane. All he proved is that he could still see the boat, which really tells us very little.
The scientists will say, oh, refraction and this and light bending around the Earth and stuff. But the fact is, it's perfectly flat, and in his book, he puts forward many, many arguments that show, many experiments that show the Earth is always perfectly flat.
Exactly. It's a well-known fact that light only travels in a straight line in a vacuum. You add in any other factors like gases, liquids, gravity, the light is going to change direction, sometimes only slightly and sometimes by a lot. Everybody knows that if you jab a stick into the water, that stick changes direction direction as soon as it crosses the surface. That's because light is refracting through that water. In the same way that light changes direction in water, it also changes direction in atmospheres. But of course, because an atmosphere is much more diluted than water, the change is much more gradual and slight.
I don't know, this explanation of using light refraction to explain the body, his friend still being visible, going down the river. Still having trouble piecing it together in my head.
We have every reason to believe that Samuel Rowbotham actually knew about light refraction because that was something that land surveyors...
Unless they're like assuming just from this graph, like it's just refracting from the distance of, like from here, the image of him here is like refracting back and forth into the telescope. Like refracting here feels a straight line. No, maybe. I can't say though.
Surveyors would factor into their calculations at the time. In fact, his experiment was set up specifically to capitalize on the way that light refracts. The colder and denser the air, the more it curves downwards. That means something that was, say, 6 miles away, the light from it would curve downwards back towards an observer, making the object appear several feet above where it actually
I don't think I knew about this. I knew about like the light, you know, refracting, but I don't think I've
separate man,
thought of it like
Alfred
that.
Russell Wallace
I'm so used to like the
this
sharp
experiment,
change
but
in
added in a
direction,
way to
or sharp
measure
change
the
of light.
difference in an observation as it relates to distance. He set up 3 poles. He set up his telescope at the first pole. The second pole was 3 miles away, and the third pole was 6 miles away. And what he observed was that the pole that was closest to him actually appeared lower down than the pole that was furthest away from him, which appeared to be higher up.
Oh, that's
which
cool.
is not only impossible on a round Earth, but is also impossible on a flat Earth. So what this suggests is that light can change direction over great distances. Boom, pont.
They say that you see the mast go down last. It's literally just the way your vision works. It's perspective and atmospherics.
Correct. It's the way your vision works. It's perspective and atmospheric.
I mean, it makes sense. Now, I mean, I feel like I got my answer from that, so let's kind of continue on. I was going to do a Mr. Beast video, but I feel... let's just kind of skim through it.
The truth destroys our economy. 57% of you don't think it's flat. Nah, it's a cube. For those of you that don't know, the cube theory was debunked in 1920. Some crazy nut jobs still believe in it, but obviously they're insane. It's clearly flat. Here's all the proof you need. Fortnite is flat, which means our Earth is flat. Duh. Fortnite wouldn't be wrong. What you're looking at right now is a
I mean, these are what the kids think.
bunch of clouds. You may not know this, but clouds are actually made by the government to disguise the fact that the world is flat.
What is this
Think about
video?
it. If it wasn't for these clouds, you'd be able to see to the edge of the Earth. That would ruin everything.
That's the ice wall.
We made it.
Can't you tell?
Almost relate. Is Earth round or flat?
Flat. If you put water on Earth, it would fly up.
Alright, so we just heard that our flight got delayed because of a ground stop, but this will not stop us. Is there any chance we're gonna like fall off the edge of the Earth?
No, don't say that.
Alright, let's
That's a
call
good
Tyler
reaction.
and see what they're up to. Hey, are you ready to prove the Earth is flat?
Dude, you have no idea how ready you are. I think this is gonna be the proudest moment of my entire life.
We're gonna disprove all our teachers. Alright, I'm T-minus 20 hours away.
Alright, well, we tried the Mr. Beast thing. Let's just go on to the next thing and why people believe in conspiracy theories. Mainly the scientific articles kind of saying like, oh, they find it in a way that they bring it into their own world to make things make sense. I imagine I can't do the Watch Mojo because we'll get yelled at. But hopefully Big Think would will show us the right light. Maybe I'll keep you open so that way we can probably have to read you if I can't show this video. Although granted, I haven't seen really these last 3 videos. Hopefully it'll be okay. I'm still waiting. Still waiting. Don't yell at me. Play some music. Calm us down. Calm down, YouTube copyright. Copyright audio and video detected. Calm down. Playing some nice, lovely music. Lovely, 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 lovely. Come on. Always dancing around us. Don't, I hope it's not like a 3 strikes you're out kind of a rule if I get this pop up one more time. I think this is the 2nd time. I don't know if there was a 3rd time. I don't know if this is the 3rd time. I don't think so. We'll find out. It sure is taking its sweet time going away. And we're good. Alright, so let's have Bill Nye. Maybe not Bill Nye. Let's go into people 60 minutes. Why people believe in flat or like these kind of theories.
Conspiracy theorists, because we have seen regular people, mums and dads, young people, old people, all on the streets, all imbibing, if you like.
Well, I think it is anyone who needs psychological comfort in a period of crisis. Because having somebody to blame, some dark forces for what is going on in the world, for some people is comforting. It is easier for them to do that than it is to accept that we're just living through a random, tragic period of human history.
So it is anyone, really.
Anyone
Anybody.
Believe in a conspiracy theories.
I mean, it's quite easy to fall into like the rabbit hole, right? Because some of them have been proven true. Not a lot of them, but like a good portion amount for people to fall down that rabbit hole of like thinking like, oh, if this is true, then maybe the other ones are true too. Maybe there's some truth to it. So that makes sense.
If the circumstances are right.
And how easy is it to go from one conspiracy to the next?
Well, actually, it turns out most people who believe one conspiracy theory are also likely to believe others. There's strong evidence to suggest that the belief in conspiracy theories clusters together. And everybody has their favorite Uncle Bruce who believes in chemtrails and is a climate denier and now probably also a COVID conspiracy theorist.
When you're speaking to someone who is adamant that they have the truth, I mean, how do you go about that? What do you say?
Well, I think the most important thing is to understand your audience and to segment based on who you're talking to. Because the vast majority of people, and we know this from
I just want to throw this into this guy. Looks like he's gone through too much conspiracy theories and he's like been down the rabbit hole, like he's recovering from it.
A large number of experimental studies that have been done. The overwhelming majority of people is actually sensitive to corrections and sensitive to evidence. If you tell them, well, there's absolutely nothing to this theory, and by the way, you know, the person who's pushing that is a doctor who's on suspension for misconduct, and it's incoherent, etc., etc. If you explain to a person why this theory should be dismissed, most people are quite responsive to that. That is what the data show. So that is sort of good news that we can do something.
Wait, I gotta go back.
Information here and etc., etc. If you explain to a person why this theory should be dismissed, most people are quite responsive to that. That is.
So explaining to them why. I mean, I feel like this still can be a flippity flop.
That is what the data show. So that is sort of good news that we can do something about the misinformation that is out there within limits. Now, it's much more problematic if you're talking to hardcore, committed believers who are immersed in a conspiracy theory and it has become part of their identity and that is sort of sustaining their worldview.
Makes sense.
That is when things become extremely difficult, and probably your effort will, well, it'll take a huge amount of effort and you may not achieve.
Well, because they'll shut down. They'll shut down their.
Because we have to
They'll shut the
remember,
conversation.
conspiracy theories have a purpose for the person who's believing them. And sometimes the purpose is just, you know, something to cling to in a situation that is frightening where they feel that they've lost control.
Is it possible there's a little bit of a conspiracy theorist in all of us?
Oh, I think all of us have some tendency to engage in the cognition I described. You know, we can be incoherent at times. Undoubtedly. And so what we're talking about here is just an extreme manifestation of what most of us are casually engaging in on a day-to-day basis when we're not being particularly careful.
I wouldn't say extreme. This is kind of like a moderate
The point of having
to extreme.
is to overcome those cognitive limitations and to replace it by a process that is ironing out those flaws. And that's why science is a better means of tracking reality than conspiracy theorists.
It's usually a range, right? You usually have the range of like people who are like don't believe in conspiracy theories at all to like the people who are like half and half believe and half don't believe, and then you have like the hardcore people that believe into it. There's like usually that range between like the hardcore versus like the people who are half believe into it, or you can have that conversation with them at first and just, you know, talk it out. But usually in the middle it's easier to talk to. People that are more hardcore into their beliefs or their conspiracy, they just are the ones that kind of shut down the conversation pretty quick, or they just get aggressive and just don't want to acknowledge that what you're pointing out for their theory or their beliefs are, I mean, it's essentially their beliefs. That at that point it's just incorrect, and they don't. It's like you're changing the world. That's like the difficult thing to do, right? Because it's one of those instances where you're not gonna change your thought then and there. It's like one of those where you have to like slowly work at it is one way. Not like a grind, but like kind of like approach it where you want to understand where they're coming from for that point of view, why they have it. And you do this from just like observing, either from like how they speak to you or like how they other stuff that they're going on in their lives too, right? You got to take that into consideration, but like that's not always gonna have the solution there. So at that point it's just like the slow workings of, and this is if you want to even try to put into work. Sometimes you just gotta let it be and let them come to that realization on their own, if they ever do, which isn't always true. They probably can always just stick with it until the end, and that's just how they want to be. But yeah, that's at least what I think when it comes to those hardcore believers, those hardcore conspiracy believers. Just, you can talk to them up to a certain point. It's only when you... Oh, wrong thing. It's only when you meet with their wall, their brick wall of like shutting you out. That's when you can't really do much else. I mean, yeah, you can like point some stuff out here and there, but like once they shut down, then that's it. Or like they end the conversation, that's it. They just have to try to have the realization themselves, which can be either like a very slow process. And so it's really up to you if you want to try to deal with that. Well, that, I think, I'm going to call it a stream. I just wanted to do a nice little stream about conspiracy theories, at least a brief touch on some of them, mainly like the flat earth, because I kind of ran into a video about flat earthers making a point. And I just thought it'd be something interesting to kind of look into. So yeah, have a nice, wonderful Saturday night, probably morning where you are now. Bye-bye.